Lewis Hamilton had another terrible race at the U.S. Grand Prix where he crashed out of the race at the exact same place where Russell caused problems during the last part of Saturday practice, and it looks like the British driver is now really upset with all the problems he's had to deal with at Mercedes with 5 more races left in his Mercedes car, and it seems like Hamilton is now facing the hardest races in his whole career, and this might affect how well he does in his first year. Driving for Ferrari next year, it's clear that Hamilton has had a really bad time ever since the summer break ended, and his best finish was only 5th place in Italy, so you could say that he's pretty disappointed, especially because he won 2 races. Before the break in Belgium and at his home race in England, Mercedes was supposed to bring some good car improvements to Austin. But suddenly it seemed like the last-minute changes to the car that somehow always happened to Hamilton's car made it worse to drive, with him spinning off the same corner where Russell ended Saturday practice early. This is really strange to understand because we're talking about the king of this Austin track with 6 wins ever since this race started back in 2012, and to see him spin off like a beginner driver under pressure is definitely not something that could have been his own mistake. When talking about it, Hamilton said that he's never spun here as long as he can remember in his whole career, which means that the way the team set up the car just a couple of hours before Saturday practice left him in a really bad position as he got knocked out early and had to start the race in 17th place. Talking more about this, Hamilton said, "I had a great start to the race and I moved up quickly and got up to 12th place, and that was only the 2nd lap, so I wasn't going full speed, not pushing. Really hard just trying to take care of my tires. The car started bouncing as I went into the turn, and then it just lost all grip at the back and just spun around on me. I've never spun in a race before, not that I can remember at least, and if I have, it can only be once maybe in all these years. It's definitely frustrating, but I know that it wasn't because I wasn't paying attention or anything. It's just unlucky what would hurt Hamilton the most is that Russell finished 6th place starting on the hard tires from the pit lane, the same tires that the 7-time world champion started on, and you can only imagine where the British driver would have ended up if he didn't spin out, since he gained 5 positions in just a couple of laps without wearing out his tires too much. Clearly, Mercedes is the only team on the grid that hasn't understood the rules completely, and they are still having trouble making their car improvements work, while Ferrari had a 1-2 finish and Red Bull and McLaren were right up there with good speed. It's a really sad and terrible finish for Hamilton's time at Mercedes in Austin, and team boss Toto Wolff had nothing but sadness for the way the race ended up for Hamilton, as the Austrian boss knew that there was nothing Hamilton could have done to avoid that crash. It's not about how good the driver is, but the way the car was put together before the short Saturday race started. Hamilton reported a clicking sound from the front of the car, something that he thought would ruin his race even more, and that turned out to be the suspension part of the Mercedes car, with the team having to rebuild the entire car for the race weekend, including Saturday practice. It was clear that Hamilton was pretty upset with how the Mercedes car performed, and when someone told him that the car was nowhere near as good as it was during the short Saturday race, the 7-time world champion desperately asked, "Where has the car gone, man?" But the problem that Hamilton had during the race is something that he also had during the first and only practice session in Austin, and when talking about it, the 7-time world champion said that maybe the new car improvements had something to do with it, because Russell was so fast with the Singapore version of the car that team engineer Allison called a learning part of their improvement plan. Also, Hamilton said, in the first practice, I had the same problem with the left front bouncing, and the rear end just came around the same as George in Saturday practice. I had the spin in turn 3, which is so unusual. I was just talking about George clearly having the same problem on Saturday. He has gone back to the old version of the car and is looking good out there, so maybe there is something wrong with the new improvements. What shows Hamilton's loyalty to the team is that he offered his car's improvements to Russell after the crash, since the team didn't have enough spare parts to put on Russell's car after he crashed in Saturday practice, but the team said no, which suggests that they might trust the improvements that were used in Singapore more than the ones they brought to Austin, even though Wolff has strongly said no. Whether or not the Austin improvements are going to work the next race in Mexico will definitely show us. everything, but right now it does look like Mercedes is in a messy situation that is only pushing away important engineers and drivers like Hamilton. Again, Wolff can only defend Hamilton, but it's now clear that Lewis has lost all trust in his engineers, and even his race engineer Bono, because it's pretty obvious that Mercedes is not really paying much attention to him and his car after he announced his move to Ferrari. Whether they have the right to feel betrayed by his move is up to them and their personal feelings, but showing that on the track and with how the car behaves is definitely something that shouldn't be happening, especially not with the man who brought so much success to your team. When talking about Hamilton's crash in Austin, Wolff said, "From where I sit right now, it's 100% not Lewis's fault, and that's not to say that I'm protecting him. It's clear that it was windy. There was a slipstream effect. How does all of that work together? It was 100% the car Lewis was not even pushing hard at that point. We saw it with George on Saturday. Maybe that was pushing too hard, but still suddenly losing control and putting it in the wall on Sunday. There was wind and a bit of dirty air from the car in front. We definitely have a problem, and I don't know if the problem was the same yesterday. Lewis Hamilton doesn't lose control of the car on lap 2 like this. This is probably one of the reasons why Lewis is now really wanting the last 5 races to be finished, because his future team has suddenly become a candidate to compete for the team championship as well, being just 8 points behind Red Bull right now and 44 points behind McLaren. The improvements that the Ferrari team brought to Austin weren't that big, and it seems like this was the best thing to do on a sprint weekend where you have limited time to test them. The race speed and tire saving were definitely perfect, and it shows that the 1-2 finish was definitely not lucky but earned through pure racing skill. Still, Wolff is now sure that the problem is not with the improvements themselves, saying that they will continue with the same version in Mexico. The question is whether or not they will be able to get the most out of it and when. Talking about this, he said, "I don't think we have a basic problem with the improvements at all. I think it's more about how things work together, more aerodynamics and mechanical stuff, and so, we're going to continue with the upgrade. It makes no sense not to, because there's a lot of lap time you leave behind, but on the other side you need to be very open-minded. It's more about figuring out why we have a car that on Friday is by far the fastest. Before the Colapinto situation, Hamilton was 0.4 of a second faster, and the last part of the track was just trouble, but he would have been fastest. And then on Saturday, it's completely different with all this in mind. Do you think that Hamilton is being treated unfairly at Mercedes? And what's even more important, do you think that he's now really wanting these last 5 races to pass by so that a new chapter at Ferrari will bring a bit more happiness to his career? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to learn more about the latest drama between Norris and Verstappen and their racing in Austin, make sure to click on the video that's on your screen right now.